I can see you while we're talking. All right.
I like the setup. It's pretty
Hmm.
cool.
Thank
It
you,
it helps to have multiple monitors and
man. Especially when it comes to editing videos, the big long monitor is very key in the videos because I need to be able to zoom into the timeline. I don't know how well you can see that because it's probably glaring a little bit because of the. It's probably
just a little around the faces, but pretty
yeah.
good. Looks pretty good actually.
But yeah, having so this bottom part here, I don't know if I'm blocking or not. When you get ready to zoom into this whole thing, I mean, having as much of a span because before I needed to be able to see all these areas, but when you had a screen ending here, screen break, and a screen break here, it was just hard on the eyes, And now it's easier for me to edit a little bit quicker with that thing. But yeah, so yes, sir. I'm just enjoying the ride and enjoying conversation with you right now.
Right, hey Linda, good to see you. Well, most of the people that's going to see this will know who you are, obviously, but
Okay.
you know, uh, just to introduce this is William Hall with Tonight Talk, my brother from another mother and a
Indeed,
father.
indeed, indeed.
Uh, but Will has come on today to just give us a little bit of his background and talk to us a little bit. So we want to thank him for doing this and giving us his time. I know it's hard, man. I don't do much. I just work mainly with Rabbi Dove out of Israel with Noahide World Center, which he's kind of on his own now, but he's still affiliated with Noahide World Center. So we just do one class a week, or we may do a bi-weekly meeting with Noahides online, and that's enough to keep me busy, just trying to,
Hmm.
and trying to manage the channel, the emails that people send you and questions and things that I can't imagine. I'm sure you've got a lot of irons in the fire. I have no doubt.
I certainly do, and it's I wouldn't have it any other way, of course. It's definitely the path that I'm glad to be on, no doubt. But yeah, we usually putting out usually about 4 to 5 videos a week, and like you said, just one video alone is very taxing. Before before this last year, I had my software set up so that I would just record everything, and as soon as it was done, I would just send it up to YouTube.
Mm.
And I did that for years, but because I didn't really have a choice. I was in construction, so I'd have to leave the house and go to work, and it was like you had to figure out a way to get everything done as quickly as possible. And of course, now I'm actually spending more time in the studio, and now the videos they just take longer to edit, and now all the file sizes are getting so huge now because of camera clarity and the resolution, and it's just and everything dominoes off into other things you have to consider, and if you don't consider them they become problems and you got to figure out how to fix them. So but yeah, typically if I do one video with Rabbi Singer, for example, is an hour and a half, and it usually takes me on average about 4 hours to edit just his one video. Sometimes more, sometimes up to 6 hours, depending, because there's a lot of different aspects to the editing. I've got to separate the video. Now that I'm using the green screen, gives it more of a professional studio look in the edited product. That's just another thing that takes longer. And I'm finding that the second passion that I love to do, fishing, I don't have time for anymore. So anyway, in a nutshell, that was that.
But people don't realize, like, I really appreciate, say, like on Rabbi Singer's videos he'll put up on his channels. Usually he'll have a card drop in with the scripture, and then the scripture's typed out. That takes time.
Yes.
You got to put in a card. It's got to be timed right. You got to look at your timing, the sound, everything.
Yep.
You have to actually type those scriptures in. It's a lot more than what I thought it would be, but it's fun work. It is fun. Well, I wanted to ask you, more. I know you do a lot of hosting of rabbis and interviews of people with their testimonies. I wanted to just kind of get you on and talk to you about you a little bit. Maybe tell us a little bit about where you started out in this life. Uh,
Sure.
I know you
Sure.
did live in Tennessee for a while, so
I did before I knew you, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. So now I was raised. My biological father was a preacher. I was adopted when I was about five. We had four siblings, and the two older boys went with the dad, and the two younger, myself and my sister, went with my mom. She remarried to a very secular, mean, angry guy. We went through a lot of childhood trauma for that. Anyway, growing up, I remember having my first what I felt was a spiritual experience at a church when I was 9 years old in a Nazarene church, which is weird because my mom was Baptist, so but somehow or another we ended up going to a Nazarene church in Durant, Oklahoma, and something just came over me, and it's like even today I still can't really explain it other than it was a spiritual experience. Anyway, so I kind of at that point in time was my first thought in my brain that there's something greater in this world than just the people on it. And then after that, it was like then nothing. Whenever I went back to church, it was just that one thing happened. It's like somebody had a baby and just dropped it on the curbside. It's kind of what it felt like. Still continued getting raised in that secular home. Ran away when I was 16 to go find my biological father, and when I went to go find him, that's when my religious journey really started to come unfolded. And
So you were in Oklahoma at that time and you took off at 16. Where'd you end up?
it was at Ada, Oklahoma when I ran away from home. Long story short, that triggered a couple of events. I wound up going back home because that kind of resolved some issues I was having at home. Really resolved all of them because my stepdad at the time, now he became afraid that everybody else knew what he was doing, how abusive he was and stuff. So he changed overnight, thankfully.
Yeah.
But not long after that, I went back and found my biological father, and eventually moved when I was 16, almost 17. I moved out of Oklahoma into the Austin, Texas area where my dad and stepmom were at. So that was that specific spot. And at the time, I didn't know that they were religious at all. I mean, I knew they were religious. I didn't know if he was a preacher or anything like that. But as it turns out, he was a preacher. My grandfather was a preacher. My great grandfather was a preacher. It kind of ran in our male side. My oldest brother is in the ministry now. Even my next oldest brother, who is a year and a half older than I am. He's in between me and the one that's in the ministry now. I think thanks to me, he's not in the ministry. So we have him and I have a really neat relationship. He's not pursuing any religion at all because I think he was more turned off by it as well, especially after seeing the journey that I was on and realizing that Christianity wasn't all it was cracked up to be. Um, Let's see, where was I going? If you feel free to jump in and interrupt at any time.
Okay.
If I start rambling, I'll just keep on going until you
Well,
like,
I know the feeling. I do the same
yeah,
thing.
okay.
Well, so you grew up there in Oklahoma and you kind of had a taste of Christianity then and sort of a family business in a way. I know the feeling. I grew up. It's I guess it's an American thing, and we're
Sure.
probably pretty close to the Bible Belt, both of us. Grew up in East Kentucky, and it was you either accepted the Bible, King James only, or they beat you over the head with it, one or the other. So, but I know the feeling. I know the feeling. So,
Yeah.
how'd you end up in Tennessee?
Tennessee, that was an interesting story. So I had after I'd moved here when I was 16, I started taking God more seriously and such, and started
Okay.
going to church. Anyway, I wound up getting married. Oh God, there's so much there. I got to figure out how to zoom out and give you an overall view. Otherwise, it'll take 3 days to tell the story. How did I get to Tennessee? It came out of a second marriage, a divorce of a second marriage. She was very abusive, which is really weird. I've always heard the stories off and on about guys who are abused by their wives, and I used to laugh at that. I was like, that's not even possible. Oh,
Yeah,
believe
I
me,
know
it's
a
very
few. Yeah,
possible,
yes, it
physically
is
abusive.
very possible.
So
Absolutely.
anyway, I ran from that. I wound up going back to Oklahoma because that was the only place I knew. And then I got a job working at this place, and they were like, "Man, you need to go to Tennessee," because they would hear me singing. I'm singing along with the radio. And say, "Oh, you need to go to Tennessee." And I'm like, Tennessee for me was like you might as well said Africa or Israel,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
because it's like that was way across the United States. I've never even been outside of Texas and Oklahoma. Long story short, I eventually got a job in a construction job with a painting company that was doing repairing Walmarts. They would go in and do inside remodeling of different sections of Walmart, and they needed a handful of people in the paint crew. And this guy that I was working for doing painting hired me on, and I was like, "This is great." Well, the very first place he went was Tennessee, and I was like, "Wow, that's crazy. That's where I always wanted to go."
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up in Tennessee. And when I got there, I got off the painting crew and went straight for Nashville and started singing there. Got a job working at 3 different places, just nights, different nights of singing, just entertaining people, with just singing. I don't know how to play guitar or anything. But anyway, that was that short story. And then that is also happens to be where I met my wife that I'm married to now, 25 years ago.
Awesome. Congratulations. Yeah. That's great. Sometimes it takes us a while to find that person.
Third time's the charm for me.
So is that when you kind of got into the missionary work then?
Whatever I met her, and of course she had a daughter at the time. She was 7, and then when I realized the relationship was getting serious, I got out of the music industry and just went back into construction again. And then while we were together is when I got back involved in the church again. Because when I was in Texas to begin with, when I was married, I was involved with the church then as well for quite some time. Went to different churches, and I was associate youth pastor doing things and helping out with lots of different projects. Then I left Texas for Oklahoma, then to Tennessee. Then after I got with my wife, and then out of the music scene, now I'm back into thinking I need to get this lifestyle fixed again and get back in the church. And so we did. So me and her found the church in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It was on the way to a mega church. It's kind of a mega church now, but it had like 10,000 members when we got there. I think now they've got like 50 or 60,000. It's crazy.
Wow.
I can't even fathom that. But anyway, went to church there, stayed there with her for quite some time, and then we ended up leaving there, coming to Austin area again. I guess you could call Austin being my roots, as far as where I'm from. And so came back, went to work for my brother. He was big time in the church. He wasn't teaching or anything then. He had a full-time job. He had his own business. He hired me to come to work for him. So my wife and I started going to work. We moved down here, excuse me. We moved to the Austin area in Round Rock, went to work for him. And then about 6 months after I was working there, I was talking to my dad, who was a preacher, just a mainstream preacher, Baptist for a while. And he switched over to Messianic, where he became, he calls himself a rabbi. One thing I've noticed is most of your Messianic rabbis are self-appointed. They really haven't gotten an official smicha from anybody important. But so I went, he kept calling me up and we would talk, and he would say, "You need to learn Hebrew, son." And I'm like, "I don't really care about Hebrew at all." I had no desire whatsoever. And every phone call would go into another situation about Hebrew. I'm like, "Dad, I don't want to learn Hebrew." And I didn't see the importance of it. And then that triggered me to just kind of like stumble onto other topics. And then I got thinking about the Sabbath day, and I started looking it up myself, and I was like, wait a minute. Maybe Hebrew is important, because I didn't know that all the days of the week didn't have names in Hebrew. They only have numbers. So it's like God made a foolproof plan that Christians totally didn't see. And so at the time, I was going to the church my brother was going to. I think it was called Celebration Church in Georgetown. It was also a really, really huge church. It wasn't a mega church, but it was really big. And they had 2 different campuses. I guess combined in one, it would have been a mega church. But we were going there. I was there for probably about 2 months. We'd gone, and I was looking into the Sabbath day, and at the time they had church on Friday night, Saturday night, and Friday night, Saturday night, and then Sunday morning 3 times. And so, and I was like, and I found out about the Sabbath day. I was like, oh, well, great. this is perfect, good timing. I'm switching from Sundays to Saturdays. And we got an email before that next Saturday came. Within that week, they sent out a mass email saying we're canceling all Friday and Saturday services. We're only doing Sundays now. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? This is so. The only answer I had at that point in time was the only way we could go to Saturday church at the time was to call my dad and say, "Okay, let us come hang out with you," because he was doing Saturdays, and so that's how I got into the Messianic movement, was through that window, and then I started learning Hebrew. I was self-taught, even up until I started hosting rabbis here, or yeah, teachers here who actually teach Hebrew. I was very self-taught in all my Hebrew. It was a long journey, but that was kind of how I got from there to here. I'm going to let you.
It seems like uh, the majority of people you run into within the Noahide movement are former Christian, and I would say a very high number, maybe 90% of them, dabbled a little in the Messianic movement.
Sure.
It's like it's just a natural gravitation to the Messianic. You're thinking, okay, this seems more legit. Jesus obviously was a Jew. The apostles were Jewish, and this has that Jewish feel about it. And then all of a sudden, you come to that realization: wait a minute, this
Yep.
is just a dressed up Christianity.
Yep.
So what was that? What was that aha moment for Will? What was that lightning bolt that said, "Wait a minute, I'm on a completely wrong path here"?
That lightning bolt is coming just around the corner. Passover. That was the trip for me. I had
Passover.
at this time I had by this time I had already had left my dad's synagogue thingy, and he calls it a synagogue, his little church. And don't get me wrong, his if a stranger walked in to his synagogue, he would definitely think he was not in church, because it was very synagogue-ish in every aspect of the way. They had the ark, they had the Torah scrolls. I mean, the men had the tallit, women. It was all very very Jewish painted, which is part of their tactics to try to get Jewish people to come and stay.
Yeah.
And so I had eventually left there. I ran into some issues, relationship issues with my dad. So I basically started a home shul, and we started having people come here for about 3 years. And then, Passover was coming around, and I was like, well, now I've got to come up with the Passover message. So I started sitting down. It was the last minute, because it kind of snuck up on me. So I was looking, and the very first couple things I was looking at, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. So I called. There's a Messianic guy. His name is Brad Scott. Is very popular. I don't know where he's at now. I haven't heard from him in years. And then another guy, I forget his name. And so I called them. I said, "Hey, I got to come up with this message, but I'm like, how do I explain, A, B, and C?" And they told me the answers I already knew. And I was like, I didn't want to argue with them, because it wasn't this
Right.
wasn't why I
Yeah.
called. And I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks." And I was like, well, that didn't make any sense. So I was like, well, so we did a Passover Seder, and I just did it like I kind of did it like I knew to do. But while I was doing it, I was like, this just doesn't make any sense. But I didn't want anybody to know that. So that year passed. That was my first questioning. And then I figured, well, I'll just deal with it next year. And so next year came around, and snuck up on me again. I didn't prepare for it. And came up to it. And I had like, a week and a half to dig into it. And I was coming across the same problems, but more questions than the ones I had before. And so I've got all these questions together, and I'd called a couple of the people that were leaders, like Steve Helsher, who has a Messianic congregation in Georgetown, and talked with him and a couple others. And the pattern just kept repeating itself. They kept telling me the answers I already knew that now didn't make sense to me, because I was studying it from a different angle. And so that year I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna have a meal, and we're just gonna like socialize and just talk about Passover. We're not gonna have a big Seder. And so we did had probably, I don't know, 25 people or something came over, and we just talked. I didn't give any indications. I was still praying in the name of Yeshua and all this other stuff. But then the third year came around, and the same problem. This time I had more time to prepare for it, and I started looking it up. And by this time, I was already aware of who Tovia Singer was, because a friend of mine he's still a good friend of mine now, Lon Cherry Holmes. He was bar mitzvahed into Messianic Judaism. He was born in the Messianic movement, which is kind of unique. And he had left and moved to Israel, and he had been talking with me every once in a while, just dropping seeds of doubt in the New Testament. And they started to settle in. So by the time this third time came around, I was talking with all these different people, same problems I was having. I said, then this one caused me to just cancel. I'm not doing this anymore. And so I canceled the Seder, and then we just went back to the normal routine of the Saturday Sabbaths at my house. Yeah, we'd pull up my Torah scroll, I'd read from the Torah scroll, and do the whole thing. But this time I started removing Yeshua's name from all the prayers because this time I was like really stressed out,
Yeah.
and I basically my prayer was like, God, show me the truth. I don't care what it means. I
Right.
don't care if it means leaving Jesus. I don't care. I just want to know what the actual truth is. If it means me
Yep.
converting to Islam or to be a Hindu or moved out to be a monk somewhere, I just want to know what it is. Just show me.
Yeah.
So I was studying, and the first thing that I felt compelled to do was stop reading from the New Testament for about a year. At this time, I was still straddling the fence, but I was trying to study Tanakh, or study the Old Testament, which Christians call it, from without having the Jesus thing playing in the background. If you ever try to
Mhm.
listen to, if you're ever trying to think of a song in your head and you can't remember what it's called, but there's another song playing, it's really difficult to think of that song unless you get it quiet, right?
Right. Right.
Same concept. So,
I can't believe how similar our stories are, though. Really, I would always I respected church, went to church with family and stuff, but I was reluctant to join. I don't know, I was skeptic about things and had questions, but I finally joined in like 2008, I think. And not long after, I began teaching like a Sunday school class to the adults. I don't know how you guys do it in Texas, but out this way, it depended on the type of church,
mhm,
you would have the kids go off into a room for Sunday school, and then
yeah,
someone would present a class to the adults. And I began to teach to the adults. And I had a feeling, well, they've probably heard the same stuff. They're older than me, most of them. They've heard all these stories of Jesus 100 times. So
mhm,
I thought, well, I'll come up with a little project. I'll look up everywhere the New Testament quotes the Old Testament, and then I'll give the explanation and give them a teaching there. And and I'm looking at it, and nearly every case it was misquoted, taken out of context, changed completely. So like you, I kind of went to my elders and I said, "Can you explain this?" And they really couldn't give me the answers that I wanted. So I left that church and I went to other churches, and I would go to their elders and I would say, "Can you explain this?" And nobody could give me the answers. So I stumbled upon the Messianic, and Michael Skoback eventually sort of fell in there. I don't know how, but when I started hearing his lectures, wow, the bells and whistles were going off.
nice.
Uh, Rabbi Skoback, in my opinion, would present a bulletproof case. He would fortify the Christian position and offer stuff that I didn't even realize that was part of my own position, to fortify it. And then he would show how it was all completely wrong. And
Mhm,
I mean,
nice.
that was the moment I had to hit my knees and correct myself, and what a moment, because you just, wow, feel lower than dirt. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think anybody that's willing, I think at least the examples were given in Torah and Tanakh, when people are willing to correct themselves, God looks at them and says, "There's something I can work with there."
Hmm.
It's never perfect people. It's always imperfect people that he's working with, but they're willing to make those corrections in themselves to then carry out whatever will he wants them to do.
Hmm. Right.
So when did you kind of begin to work as, I want to say, Noahide? You probably didn't at that time, probably didn't know what a Noahide was, but
Right.
how did you meet Rabbi Singer, and how did you kind of get going with that?
So after I quit doing our I basically shut down our little homes, our home group, our homeschool thingy. I basically shut it down completely. And at the time, I was teaching Hebrew. I'm still friends with my friend Lon, who is fluent in Hebrew now, and he was teaching me stuff on the side as I started having questions. I would call him, and he would answer questions for me. So I was teaching. Homeschool stopped, but the Hebrew classes continued for a while, and there was a handful of the people that were coming to us to my little home group who decided they want to keep coming because they wanted to keep learning Hebrew. They liked that aspect. And after a couple months of that, I basically stopped doing that too because I've realized they were just doing it. They were doing it for the wrong reasons. They were trying to enhance their relationship with Jesus and try to become more messianic or Jewish Christian, if you will. And I just wasn't interested, so I shut that down. By this time, I had called before this time happened. My friend Lon had convinced me to open up a few videos from Rabbi Singer, and so whenever I finally did, first I wouldn't do it. I was heck, no, I was terrified. I was like, no, I don't want to know anything that's going to lead me away from Jesus. This was several years back, and then finally I finally decided to open it up, and got the nerve to call, and he answered the phone, which was really cool. I didn't expect that. I figured it was going to go to a voicemail. He answered the phone, and we talked for about 10 minutes on the phone, and he just answered a couple. I don't even remember what the questions were. I was so starstruck by him answering. But then I'd asked him what it would take to get him to come to Texas, because I would love for him to. I would love, that would have been awesome. It was. I'll tell you the story. I wanted him to come here so that my home group people that were coming here, that were at this point in time, by this time, were more in the Messianic side of things, not Christian, because it would have been great for them to hear from his professional experience, And so we arranged it. He was already coming to Houston, and he was at the time he was in Indonesia in Jakarta, and he had his flight was going to fly directly to Houston from I don't remember where he was getting overlay at, but I talked him into coming to Austin instead. And I was going to go pick him up and bring him back. I'm going to fast forward. There's a lot of details there. It's really not necessary. Fun details, but not necessary. Long story short, his flight that there was two planes going out of Indonesia. One was going or wherever he was, wherever the transfer was, and one of them was going to Houston, and the other one was going to Austin. The one that was supposed to go to Austin, they were having mechanical issues, so they actually canceled that flight completely, and they had to put him on the trip to go to Houston. So the very first Tanakh Talk show we ever had wasn't Tanakh Talk at the time. It was just I had, about 25, 30 people had showed up for this event where Tovia Singer was going to be there. Tovia had sent books and stuff already there, so that way when he got there, people wanted to buy his books, they could. And but because he wasn't there, we did a Skype thing, and it was his idea. He said, "Hey," he goes, "How many people are there?" And I told him, he goes, "Well, can you put me on the screen and let them ask questions?" I said, "Sure, let's do that." So the idea of doing the Skype or the video conferencing thing was his idea to begin with. By this time, I had already been looking into, because I was a teacher myself, and I really wanted to do virtual teaching instead of like in-house teaching anyway. And so this was kind of like a stepping stone to get me to where we're at now. And so we wound up
Did you
going.
think? Did you think it would go anywhere really?
Oh no, not at all. In fact, I
Yeah.
just I just wanted to do it because I felt like it was something I was supposed to do. I mean, even if
Yeah.
nobody watched, I just felt like that was something, like it was a bucket list thing that was in my mind. I felt like I think this is just something I need to do. And once I'm
Yeah.
done, if it doesn't work, then I'll move on to something else. That was my whole thought. And so we did that one thing while he was loading the airplane. And I've got the videos here. I think the links are already available to that very first interaction with him, and it was amazing. And so the next day, me and Lon and his friend Nachon from Israel, they both came in from Israel, and we all went to Houston the next day to see his lectures there. And it was one was the lecture at a synagogue, and then the other one was the debate with William Lane Craig, I think it was, or whatever, in Houston in August of, what was that, 2014, something like 2015, something like that. Anyway, so while we was there, and first I couldn't see Rabbi in the beginning because he was already being ushered towards the podium area. But after it was done, me and my friends walked over to where his booth was. After the debate was over, they had this William Lane Craig was on one side with his books, and Toby was on this other side. And this was at Houston Baptist University, so there was a lot of Christians, lots of Christians there.
That's
And
the one where the lights went off when he got up to
yes,
speak. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah. I've seen
yep.
watched it several times. That's a good one.
So ironically, whenever the debate was over, and everybody was downstairs or outside in the lobby area, it was a massive lobby. There was like everyone. I mean, everyone was over by Rabbi Singer's booth. There wasn't a single person over by Craig's at all, and I felt bad for him. And he stood there for about 10 minutes just waiting, and then he just grabbed his stuff and left. And everybody stayed at Rabbi Singer's booth. And so all that finally, the time wound down, and then we were going to Rabbi Singer and I talked. I introduced. He saw me. He saw me for the first time on Skype because we had the video Skype going, so he knew what I looked like. And then we finally connected after we was walking out to the car, and then first it was me and Rabbi Singer, and then Lon and Nachon. We were all walking together down the sidewalk, and then this space just started getting created because Rabbi Singer and I was talking back and forth, and so Lon and his friend got kind of behind us, and we started walking, and we decided we were going to go to a coffee shop, and just a small, like maybe 10 of us there. We're going to go to like Starbucks and just hang out and talk for a little while. And my friend Lon, he cracks me up. So we're at Starbucks, and I'm sitting there. I got my cell phone. I'm recording everything, like a news journalist or something. And all these questions, and Lon keeps tapping me on the shoulders. Man, put your camera down. Stop. He said, you're harassing this guy. And I was like, not a chance, man. So I just kept on recording. I was asking questions, and then the night ended, and then I think it was the next day. We were talking. Rabbi Singer and I were talking on the phone, and he was so excited about how that went while I was doing the Skype thing from my house. He said, "Hey," that thing we did with the Skype Q&A with the people in your house. He goes, "Is there any way we could set up something like that on a weekly basis?" And I was like, "Oh, absolutely." At the time, I had no clue. I didn't even know what I was doing then. I was like, "You got it. Yeah, we could definitely." Yeah. But because I had already been trying to find a way. Some sort of transition to get into this sort of thing to begin with, even before I met Rabbi Singer. Originally, I think his anticipation was just to start like a Tovia Singer show. But I was thinking to myself, as well, if I'm going to start this thing, I need to give it more of a neutral name so that I can actually have other guests on the show. And and so that's where Tanakh Talk came in. And I didn't even come up with a name. A friend of mine did. In fact, he actually created. Oh, let me back up. This is an important feature. So the friend I'm talking about, his name is Travis Wertz. Well, they live They lived in a house 13 minutes from where I live at now at the time. And one year when I had the Messianic thing going on, there was like the second year where I was like, we just had we had everything laid out right, but we didn't really go through all the readings. We just kind of talked about it. Well, somehow or another, I had met his wife at a coffee shop in the next town over. Is like 18 minutes from here, and she approached me because I was up there studying, and I was already like I was still heavily messianic, but I was wandering out of it. Anyway, there were some Christian preachers there, and I was just listening, and I had full intentions of getting into conversation with them, but I wanted to make sure the time was right. So I was sitting there, and then time came up, and then I don't remember what we talked about, but I just presented questions for them so they would question the New Testament back and forth, and then they got nervous and got up and left, and then so. The Sarah, she was sitting across from me, and she came over real politely and said, "Hey, introduce herself." And I told her, "Hey, yeah, so we've got told her where we live." They said, "Oh, we live far from you," and so they decided they were going to come to our Passover. And I thought it was great. I thought they were Messianic at the time, so they came. And we'd talked a couple times on the phone before, being her husband and me and her. And then they came to the Passover thing, and then all of a sudden they ghosted us. And I was like, that was weird. And I had no idea why. Because honestly, I didn't know anybody who was leaving. I thought it was only Christianity, and then you have Messianics. I thought that was it. There wasn't anything else. And so I didn't know, but they already knew who Tovia Singer was, and I didn't. And so the reason why they didn't come back, because they didn't know we were Messianic. They thought we had left Christianity altogether. And so anyway, so some time passed, and I'm meeting Rabbi Singer and all this other stuff. and I'm now fully Noahide, Ben Noah, so to speak. I've ditched the New Testament completely behind. So we're going to have me and my wife. We're going to have Passover, just us, whatever. And I called him up and said, "Hey, we're going to have Passover this year," and I had to leave a voicemail, and she didn't answer the phone. It's still ghosting still, and then I didn't hear back from her like 3 or 4 days, and I was like. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. It's like, oh, that's probably why. They probably think we're Messianic. So I called her back again about 3 days later and left her a message. And I said, by the way, have you heard of this guy named Rabbi Tovia Singer? Because we have, and I think he's onto something. And that's all I said. And then she called me back right away. I was like, that's what it was the whole time. It was great. So
So they probably already had some,
they,
some experiences with blowback, no
oh
doubt.
yeah, oh yeah.
Did you have a lot of the blowback once you finally accepted
Oh,
the?
oh, I absolutely did. But to finish that part of the story real fast, so we connected, and then we had this whole the Skype thing with Rabbi Singer, and then we went to Houston, and then on the way back from Houston after the debate, I'm talking to I called my buddy Travis up, her husband Travis, and I said, and I told him, I said, hey, we're coming back from Houston. He goes, what are you doing in Houston? I said, well, we went to the debate with Rabbi Singer. And he said, oh, I forgot about that, blah, blah, blah. And I said, but I got a problem. He said, what's up? I said, well, I did a Skype thing. I told him what we did. And I said, and he wants to do something like on a regular basis, but I have no clue. And I knew Travis was a techie. And so he immediately said, he goes, really? He goes, dude, don't worry about this. I got this. And I'm like, and that was it. And then we hung up. I'm like, what do you mean you got this? And so by the time I gotten home, a couple days had passed, and he called me up and he said, "William," he goes, "Okay." He said, "We got it covered." He goes, "We need to run some tests." Blah blah blah. He said to come out to my house. So he had already come up with the name Tanakh Talk because he knew the Tanakh was better, and he knew the proper spelling for Tanakh Talk, but at the time that website option wasn't available, so he spelled it TNAK instead of TANSCH.
Sure, yeah.
And so we went with it, and then he came up with the 800 number, the 855-95 Bible, everything. Dude is super creative. He had his computer set up. He had video cameras already set up and everything. I was blown away. And so I walked in and I was looking at something totally foreign to me. I didn't recognize any of this stuff. I barely even knew how to use a computer at the time. And that's where we did our very first Tanakh Talk show, was actually at his house in Sunrise Beach. And that's where it began. And that's where things progressed.
That's awesome.
And so that's basically how the Tanakh Talk thing began. So back to your question, the blowback. Yeah, there was his name is amiss right now, maybe because I blocked it out. There was a guy in the Messianic movement when I was going to Georgetown. They knew my dad was a Messianic leader in Austin for years, and so they were very nice. I'll say they were very nice to me, probably because of that in general. Like you naturally would. It's like, oh my God, your dad's Elvis Presley. That is so cool. And then you want to be best buds with Elvis Presley's son, right? That's kind of how they felt, and so I was kind of honored by it, but at the same time, a little annoyed because at the time my dad and I weren't getting along. But he never came up in conversation. Long story short, I was going to their thing for a while, and we started doing our own thing, and then we started doing both. And I would go just to be courteous. I would go to their place every once in a while, and and visit, and we would do Shabbat and stuff. And after I started praying, God show me regardless of whatever. By this time, I was already a Messianic to begin with, but then I was I was wearing Tzitzit at the time, and
Oh, really?
yeah, and yarmulke and the whole 9 yards when I was Messianic. I was all or none type. From the
Yeah.
very beginning. And so I was like all in. I don't care if it looks goofy or not. I'm going to wear it. If that's what you're supposed to do, I'm in. And so, but anyway, I was wearing the fringes that had the blue thread in it and all this other nonsense. And one day I ordered some wool tzitzit from aish.com, I think it was, and they were all white. And I started because I'd already looked into it, and why a lot of Orthodox Jews don't wear blue because of they're not sure where the source, how to get it, whatever. And so I started wearing the white ones, and later on I found out that's when they knew something was up with me spiritually, that something had shifted in me because I took the blue out of my tzitzit. I thought it was kind of interesting. So if you want to stir up your Messianic friends, and if you're a Messianic, take the blue thread out. That'll freak them out. So, and so anyway, I eventually left, and then after I left, and I finally made it public, I was like, I was nervous, and then finally I was like, that's it. I'm going. I'm just letting all my Facebook world know, I'm done with the New Testament. And this one guy came out to my house. I can't believe his name is drawing a blank with me right now. But he was Sandy Bruce was his name. There we go. He was pretty fluent in Hebrew. Very, very much an aggressive, very strong, very powerful type speaker to where it's like, I mean, when he spoke, I mean, he kind of demanded your attention sort of a guy. But in general, kind of nice, a little fun, a little on the odd side. But anyway, after he found out, he literally came to our house and was trying to win me back. And I remember this like it was yesterday. So we're in the house, and I noticed he was not happy with the answers I was giving him. And so I'm basically guiding him to the front door because his attitude was off, and he was just he started getting rude with me instead of just being wanting out of care, having a wonderful bonding conversation and a careful one. He was just starting to get really rude, and so I was like, I think it's time we just need to end this thing and just go on your way. I said, I've already made up my mind. I'm done. So we're walking the front door. My wife's in the kitchen. My son David was standing next to her. He was, I don't know, this is 13 years ago. No, 12 years ago, something like that. And David's 19 now. Y'all do the math. And so I'm sitting at the front door, and I'm like, I opened the front door. I said, man, really, you've got to go, And he literally told me, he said, if this was in the days of Pentecost, he goes, I would take a spear and stab it through you and your wife right now, right in front of my son. I was like, whoa, this dude just like lost his lid. And that was the weirdest thing I'd ever experienced. Anyway, I got him out the house, shut the door, and that was it. And then we lived a life for a while, for quite a few months, just worrying because it was like, your life is going to be cursed now. So we were waiting for our life to be cursed. But it was just the opposite happen. It was really weird. I mean, everything. I had relationships with my oldest son that had fallen apart years ago, and God started restoring our relationships with people, and my work life started getting better. Everything just started getting better instead of worse. And I was like, this is crazy. How many people have been told, if you turn your back on Jesus, you're going to be cursed, and they are terrified of it. And so I tell people all the time, if you really want to know the truth, stop praying in Jesus' name and stop putting conditions on your prayers. Like I used to say, no matter what happens, I'll never reject Jesus. I used to say that all the time, and I stopped saying that, and things started changing. So,
well, I was a reluctant starter on this journey too. I mean, I was pretty happy just studying my little library back here and just going through the books over and over and living a pretty quiet Noahide existence, and ran into Rabbi Goldberg, Chaim Goldberg of Noahide World Center, and Rabbi Singer together at a conference here in East Tennessee. It's been, I'm guessing, 4 years ago or something. But I watched your show. You and I had talked on the phone over the years, or I called in, and I think I had messaged you or something. So anyway, I knew who you were. I'd been following you for a while, and I listened to Rabbi Skoback and Singer and all this. But Rabbi Goldberg, he was the one who pushed me. He said, "But let's do something, just to put information out there." I said, "Nobody wants to hear this, Rabbi. Nobody. We won't get one view. We might get 10 views, but we won't get one subscriber."
right.
And it's not, it's not taken off like crazy, but it has done way better than I ever imagined. I mean,
Sure.
we've got like 700 subscribers, and
Nice.
that's just floors me every time I see it. I mean,
That's wonderful. That's
I
wonderful.
can't believe it. But
Mhm.
what do you think about the popularity of the show now?
Of Tanakh Talk versus
Yeah.
when it first started, because like when you asked me a question earlier, did I ever think it was going to turn into anything or do anything? And
Yeah.
I did. Like I said, I just did it because I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. I was always in the moment type of a person and not really looking forward to the future. And that was an immaturity of mine that I adopted years ago. But in this particular scenario, though, I'm glad because I think if I was really focused on the future at the time, it would have stressed me out too much, and I would have probably made a lot of wrong decisions. And maybe I did make a lot of wrong decisions along the way. However, the path that I took it on was less pressured. It was more really spontaneous. I mean, when I first started, I didn't even share it in any groups or nothing because I just knew I was supposed to be doing it. That's all I
Right.
knew. I didn't know that there was even a such thing as monetizing and then, being able to share in all these groups because I wasn't about getting famous. I was simply about
Right.
doing it
Right.
because I felt like that's what I was supposed to be doing. And I figured whatever happens will happen naturally. I don't need me to do that for it. So,
I've
um,
had that same, and I've been watching yours since you were broadcasting out of your neighbor's spare bedroom.
nice.
So
Very cool. Very cool.
I've been watching for a while. So I had the exact same feeling. If Hashem wants it to succeed, it'll succeed. If not,
Yep.
then it'll come to an end, and I won't have to worry about it. So
Yep, and that's kind of where I'm still at now. I've shared. There's only like two groups. I think I'm a member of like 25 Facebook groups, but I think I only share it in two of them. One is mine, Tanakh Talkers, and the other one is yours.
yep,
Um,
and I
you
appreciate you doing
yeah,
that.
yeah. And it's not because I don't like the others. It's just because that's my habit and that's the pattern I've been doing, and it's just easy to do that. But I do really appreciate you and Barbie. Have been really kind to me over the years.
I did make my group private on Facebook, but if anybody's looking to join it, you can. It's non-Jews for Judaism on Facebook. Um, but I did that because, like you said, I wasn't looking to get popular.
Sure,
And there's days I'll get 100. I think the highest in one day, 120 requests to join the group. And when I look at them, and I'll always go through them, and when they've got pornographic stuff on their
right,
profiles,
right,
and it's forget you. This is not
yeah,
what this is about. So that's why I made it private, so I can scan and look at every individual before, because Noahides, a lot of Noahides, they're tired because they
yep,
fought these fights and arguments and things, and I wanted it to be a place where like-minded people could share
sure,
information and help each other.
right.
So um,
Yep.
that's
So as time went on, the I guess you could say the popularity of it, I didn't really have any anticipation. I do know that this path that you and I are on, and so many others, is still taboo, a very taboo topic. As something most
yes,
people don't
yes,
want to talk about. It's very controversial, and because of that, it's not normal for someone like that to put out a video and get, 50,000 views in the first week because it's not porn, it's not fishing, it's not paintball, it's not craft, it's not bushcraft. It's stuff that people don't want to know. The
yeah,
stuff you do want to know, you can have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I get it, you know, but because this is that these topics where people they will hang you for it in a way, spiritually.
yeah.
It's not going to get very, and that was my take from the very beginning. I mean, right now, I'm surprised that we've got as many subscribers as I do now. I mean, I really am. I mean, Rabbi Singer just hit 100,000. I'm thinking, wow, that's crazy good. That's really, really amazing,
It is amazing.
and so I think right now I'm at 49. But even that, I'm still blown away by that. I figured years ago, I'm lucky to get 5 or 6 thousand subscribers. I'll be happy with that, just because I know 5 or 6 thousand people are getting this message. And now I'm looking at Rabbi Singer, who's got 100,000 people are subscribed to his channel and
It's
getting these messages daily, and way more than that, because not everybody subscribes.
and
And so
we see it and we hear from the people, and there's just no way to deny that there is a shift happening in the world. Hashem is
absolutely,
doing something
absolutely,
that's never been done as far as we know. Um, it's never, I've been called a, a fanatic, and look at it too much sometimes, study too much, but I still, and I'll just give you one man's opinion. I like what Larry Beck says. My opinion times my opinion is still just my opinion. It
that's
doesn't
great.
mean
Yeah, I like that.
Larry Beck. I like what he says there. Uh, I think that the dispersion of the Jews had to happen, and it kind of leads me into my next questions on the Noahide movement overall. But um, the dispersion had to happen, which Hashem allowed the Jewish people as a nation to make their own choices. So I'm not saying he took away freedom of choice, It just happened when it happened. The dispersion happened because they had done enough evil, I guess, that he decided it was time. But I think Hashem, seeing into the future, he knew he had to disperse the people, because now we have these individual rabbis like Rabbi Singer Skoback or Dove Kaplan that I work with every week. They were born in America. They're fluent in English. They understand the cultural aspects of our language, certain words. So it's one thing when you learn, like you said, you were learning Hebrew. So you can translate Hebrew words for me if I say what shalom mean and you tell me. Uh, so, but if I ask you the whole cultural aspects of it and abbreviations and how they say it a little different here and that, so there's that history that they understand because they have lived dual lives, really.
Mm.
Even if it's a rabbi in China,
Yeah.
in a Chabad community in nowhere China, out in the boonies, and I've heard of them. He's living a dual life. He's living there. He understands that culture. He probably works there and speaks the language, but at home, he's studying in Hebrew. He's teaching his children Hebrew, and he's worshiping God in Hebrew. So that's the gateway for the rest of the world. So when Hashem made the deal with them to be priests of the world, a kingdom of
Mm.
priests, that's the fulfillment of that. That's what's going to help bring this movement, in my opinion. It takes these rabbis, and I hope, and you know what I've told you, I felt like when I come across your show, it was the blueprint for the future. I hope there's people in every country of the world right now putting together shows like this in every
Agreed.
language,
Agreed.
finding a local rabbi that helps break it down for them and can then turn and give it to their community. I think that's the way forward.
I
And I
agree.
think we can definitely bring the messianic age and peace along. But and what's your thoughts then on the Noahide movement overall, as you've seen it unfold, let's say in the last 10 or 15 years?
Well, I think we can all be thankful for the internet for making this information so readily available. Because if we didn't have the internet, we would still be. Feel like we were in the dark ages information wise, because like in our little town, we've got one little library up the road, and if we wanted to find out anything without the internet, we'd have to go to that library and learn how to navigate through those books just to find information you're looking for. But because now you can just a click away for all this information. I mean, this is the real reason I think for all of this big movement taking place now with the big, outflux of Christianity, people leaving Christianity is thankful for that. The information freeway is so free for everyone to find out. The movement itself it's a little you got to kind of tread it aware. You just need to be aware when you do it. Don't just carelessly wander this Noahide movement. People ask me all the time, "Do you have any Noahide books you can recommend?" And I don't. I know the books. I don't recommend them though. I don't. You have with every synagogue you go to. It doesn't matter where. It doesn't matter. You will never find two rabbis answer the same exact answers to all the Noahide questions. And the reason why is because those answers are not there. They're not out there yet. They're
Mhm.
developing these. This is a very thing that's coming. It's under development now. It's like a new building. Where's the bathroom at? I don't know yet. I need to look at the plans. Once it's built, you know where it's at. You go to it. But this is a process they're going through right now. And Rabbi Skoback said it very clearly to me, and he said, "This is a very new thing. You won't find too many rabbis agreeing on any one thing Noahide related because it's a new dynamic thing that's happening right now." And I've seen quotes from books, and one that totally contradict the other. My advice for somebody who's looking into the Noahide path would be just like somebody who's considering leaving Christianity. What is the best Bible to buy? Well, the best Bible to buy is get a variety of them, all Jewish related, and then compare when you're studying and you see something that you're not sure on. Look at the others and put those together, like kind of like the Talmud, the oral laws developed the same way. If there's a topic they couldn't explain, well, two or three of these rabbis they would get together and they would hash it out, and they would come up with another. They would come up with a final answer on what that means. That's where the whole phrase two Jews, three opinions come from. It doesn't mean they can't
Yeah.
make up their mind. It means that they can, and they do it in a manner of friendship, and they come together peacefully, and they bring all the proofs, and then they all agree on one final thing. That's the two Jews, three opinions. And so, with that said, get a Stone Edition Chumash, get a Schottenstein, whatever, and just if you're looking through them, just look at them both, and it'll help you make sense of things. Same thing goes with the whole Noahide movement. I think there's 3 or 4 main books out there now, and it's like, don't just get one and say this is the truth.
Mm.
Get all 4 of them and compare them, and just use common sense. Unless you have a rabbi, and here's the thing too: if you're a Noahide and you're living in a community where you're going to a synagogue, then you kind of need to do what your rabbi says, regardless of whether you
Mhm.
agree to it or not. To keep it's like if you get a job, you go to a job, you say, "Well, I don't like your lunch break. I want to take mine at 1." Well, then you need to go get a job somewhere else, right? It doesn't work that way. If you go to a synagogue, you kind of and you want to commit to that rabbi, you need to accept his authority and just do what he says. But if you're like me and you're out in the sticks and there's no synagogue for 2 hours in any direction or more, and you're trying to make heads or tails of this thing, just do research and work through it. There's a lot of things, a lot of opinions out there, and I don't want to shed negative light on any of them, but at the same time, I can't say just one of them is correct.
I think the biggest mistake that I've seen, at least in dealing with different Noahide groups of people and individuals, is, well, we're just going to go it our own way, you
Yeah,
know. And basically, they're kind of recreating Christianity, if you think about it. That's exactly what happened. They couldn't get, maybe like you said, they're several hours away from a synagogue or a community, and they end up, well, we'll just figure it out ourselves. We'll just get together in my house this weekend, and and then the next thing you know, they have their own opinions and ideals and the way of doing things. And anybody that's an outsider that tries to come in there, then,
yeah, they'll shut you down.
that, especially if
I
that
don't.
outsider questions the leader of the group, well,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
I
Yeah.
I understand that concept though, because I mean, like even in the church, even when I was doing Messianic, there was this one guy that used to come in, and he used to come in just to get under my skin. I know he did. He goes, "Well, William, that's not what that means." Right in front of everybody. I'm like, dude, this is something you want to talk about privately, not out in the middle of everything. And so whether it's Christian or Muslim or Messianic or whatever, it's not appropriate for people to speak out of their place, especially in a public venue like that. You know, Regarding people who are starting their own thing, it's okay. I would say it's okay to start doing things your way, but research, and then when you find out what the right way is, be willing to make changes. That's the thing.
Yeah, and if you tie yourself and your group to rabbis, even
Yeah,
if you're just watching, get together and watch them on YouTube,
yeah,
it's so that your instructions, so the Torah flows from the mountain of Zion.
hmm,
It's flowing through these rabbis.
right.
When I read the prophet saying 10 men of every nation will hang till the shirt tail of a Jew, I don't get that they're hanging to other Gentiles. I get that they're hanging to Jews.
That's exactly right.
That's
That's
the part that
exactly
I
right.
get.
That's exactly right.
Why are we hanging to them? Because they got the answers. We
Yep,
need their help to figure this
that's
out.
right.
So
And even if the rabbi you're close to doesn't know the answer right now, or he gives you an answer that doesn't make sense to you, maybe the question itself will lead him into researching more and come up with a different answer. But at the
yeah,
same
or
time,
consult other rabbis.
yeah, right,
Get
absolutely.
multiple opinions.
Yep,
Uh,
absolutely, absolutely.
well, let me throw a quote at you from some of your words from 2016. Looks like
Okay.
so. Uh, Gabriel Sanders.
Mhm.
He wrote an article in Five Towns Jewish Times. Have you ever heard Five Towns?
Yes, sir.
So he wrote it back in 2016. He says that you say, this is a quote of him quoting you. I want to do for Noahides and Jews leaving the church what Chabad.org and AISH.com has done for the Jews in general. Is that still the vision? Sort of helping
Absolutely,
non-Jews find their
absolutely,
way?
absolutely. I have had numerous people. When I say numerous, I'm not saying thousands. I mean numerous could be a couple dozen.
Yeah.
have asked me if I would start doing, because they'll call me and ask me questions about Noah, and I give them Noahide answers all the time,
Yeah.
and they want me to start a show. And but the thing about it is, I don't know of any one particular person, because I mean all the information I have Noahide wise is gleaned from all my rabbis, and so whenever people call me for for consulting and I talk to them, I give them information based on what I've collected from all of them. And so they want me to start up a show with Noahide questions, Q&As. I plan on doing that. I just haven't done it yet. Um, but I'm sorry, I think I might have deterred off of your question. No, no. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So the answer still is yes. My whole original goal for Tanakh Talk was to make resources available for Christians who are questioning their faith, and for people who've already left Christianity. But if you've ever been to lachabad.org, they've just got like categories and categories of things you can click on. Daily midrash, from the Torah reading to all these other things, women's classes, and all this stuff. So many resources, and that's ultimately how I was seeing the end result of Tanakh Talk to be something for the people leaving the church, and it still stands today. It's that trying to develop more. Thing is, it's hard to do so many things with just one person. I mean, I'm still not sure how I'm able to pull off, like you mentioned earlier. It takes a lot. There's so much involved, and so I'll do as much as I can as a one man show. I'll just put it that way.
And the
But
learning curve. I'm like you. I was decent with computers and I actually worked in the industry for a while, so I was decent with them. But still, when it comes to video editing
mhm.
and dealing with all the times and getting all of that to work out right so that it will produce in the proper formats that can then play on YouTube, that was a pretty big learning curve.
Mhm.
That was tough. That was
Sure,
tough. Well, I want to thank you for your time. I don't want to hold you
sure.
too long. Um, if there is anybody that watches this that don't know about where they can find Tanakh Talk, where can they find Tanakh Talk? I know
So
you've got a good website now, so
yes, sir. So it's tanachtalk.com. It's spelled TANACH and then the YouTube channel, if you're looking for the YouTube channel, it's still spelled the old way, TENAK, like the number 10 and an AK, Tanakh Talk. So that's the best way to find it. So youtube.com/TENAKTALK, or the website is TANACHTALK.com.
do you have a email or anything that you give out to people if they wanted to just contact you for
Yeah, you can
questions?
you can reach me at the on the current website at the William at Tanakh Talk, and it's just spelled like regular William, WILLIAM at TANACHTLK.com, and that's
Okay.
my best email for me. So yes, sir.
So everybody can just bombard you with all kinds of questions and
And I'll get to them if I can. I mean, you know this just as well as anybody, man. When you're getting 30, 40 emails a day, and you like right now, I'm 4 videos behind editing right now, and it's like, and also have a day job too, and so it's like I said, my second passion besides teaching about Hashem is fishing. I haven't been fishing in almost 3 months, and I'm like, it's killing me. I just want to go out and cast a pole, but I can't. I don't have time now. So
sadly, I haven't even bought my license this year, so I know the
gotcha.
feeling. I
Yep,
know the
I feel
feeling.
you.
First year in a long time, I didn't get them like the first week of
Yep,
season, so I know the feeling.
I feel you.
Well, thanks again, man. I really appreciate your time and everybody that's joined us, and the chat's been going pretty. Motorhead One, he's my moderator. He's a good friend of mine, Jim Norris. He lives over
Oh,
in
nice.
Virginia.
Hey, Jim.
He's been a big help, and he comes by. He travels through this area from time to time, and we meet for coffee. And he gave me a great uh, large portion of a Talmud over there. I've not made it
Nice.
all the way through it, but Jim's a great guy, and I see Dot Matrix down in the land down under. I know
Nice.
who you are. So she's one of the ones that really touched my heart recently when she sent an email that I sent her, and I welcomed her home.
Oh, that's nice.
Something I used to say a lot to people, and it touched me that it touched her. And I
Mhm.
don't want to get upset because I'm not an emotional guy, but I want to try to hush about it.
Sure.
So, but that's why I do this, is to help Hashem's people, not
Right.
Frank or anybody else. I'm like you. I was pretty pretty happy being a private person and quiet person. The last thing that anybody that knows me would have thought would I would get on a public channel, public video, because I'm just
Sure.
that's not me. But if if Shem puts you to work, you got to go to work, don't you?
Yes, right. For sure.
But
Sure.
well, thanks again, man, and
Thank you. I appreciate
look
you.
forward to your next shows and stuff, and I hope the family's well. Hope
Wonderful.
everyone's well. Have a
Wonderful.
blessed week.
And your channel should have much success and blessings from Hashem.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Amen. All right, let me hit in this
Okay.
part.